which is our honor, pleasure to welcome Ambassador of the United States of America to Georgia, Her Excellency, Madam Keli Დეგნανს. Good afternoon, dear my students, dear my professors, dear guests, Madam Ambassador, thank you very much for coming here, having your absolutely crazy schedule and take out some time for us. I think this is you are now at university, actually, who is going to run this country in next 5 to 10 years. So we students are ready to go and work for this country and make better things for this country. First of all, I would like to thank you, Madam Ambassador, for this wonderful chance for us. And I can add one more thing. What we're seeing today here, it was the beginning of US taxpayers' money back in 1998. If not US aid, if not US State Department, if not USIA, it was absolutely impossible to start Caucasus School of Business. And some of you knows about it. Nana knows for sure, because she was from beginning supporting us as a School of Business 98. And some of our faculty members, they remember very well how Americans were helping to build a School of Business and later on Caucasus University as a whole.
We have here students in front of us full of hopes, full of enthusiasm, full of motivation, the feeling that they would have the very best country and they will take part in the process to become this country really great. What we are doing in the School of Media now, we are trying to be very much focused on journalistic standards. I would like to ask you to firstly to somehow evaluate the processes that take place in the world, in the country in 2022. My first question would be your opinion. Please share your opinion about the events that happened in 2022 and which is somehow tied to Georgia.
Thank you very much. Good starting question. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. I want to thank you very much, Kaha, for inviting me to come and speak to the journalism students, the media students in particular. As a former journalist myself, I always feel at home in the company of those who are committed to helping to inform the public and take that role very seriously. It's always a pleasure to come to Caucasus University. This has been quite a year of ups and downs. On the one hand, it has been a great year for us to be able to look back and celebrate 30 years of diplomatic relations between the United States and Georgia. And always when you're looking back, you have the chance to see just how much we've done together and how much Georgia has accomplished through its own determination to build your country into a strong, prosperous democracy. Sometimes in focusing on the future and focusing on what still needs to be done, we forget to look back and see just how far this country has come through the very hard, dedicated work of people like you and your parents and your grandparents in some cases to continue that democratic experience that Georgians started over 100 years ago. So this has given me the chance to travel to all the regions of Georgia, which has been fantastic in terms of getting a chance to see this beautiful country, but also to reconnect with our partners and our friends, to make some new friends in areas that we may not have been able to visit because of COVID, and also to thank our partners who have done, just been wonderful to work with over the decades, really. Reconnect, re-energize, and really for us at the embassy to thank our partners and start planning for the future and what we're going to do together in the future. Of course, the dark shadow over 2022 was Putin's brutal attacks on Ukraine, a further invasion of Ukraine, a stated objective of erasing Ukraine's identity, its sovereignty, and reestablishing the Russian Empire of the past. There is a reason that there is no longer a Soviet Union and a Russian Empire. It's because the people didn't want it. They rejected it. And to go back with a revanchist Russia, I think is something that has galvanized the West, because Putin is putting at risk all that we have worked for over the last 70 years. That came from 2 world wars. We had to go through brutal World War I and World War II to agree as a species, as human beings, that we did not want to ever do that again. And here we are with someone who is trying to push the world in that direction, take away freedom, take away the freedom of expression, the right to have your own ideas, the right to exist as an independent nation and choose your own allies and partners. But this brutality has galvanized the West. It has made very clear what is at stake. It is a struggle between autocracies and democracies. This isn't a new battle. This is an ongoing battle that we have been fighting over the centuries. And I think Georgia is well placed to understand that just by virtue of your history, your geography. You have seen this many times before. It's part of why Georgians have such resilience and determination in holding on to your freedom, in holding on to your traditions and cultural identity, because you've had people try to take it from you before. What you also have this wonderful opportunity to accelerate your European Union membership, something that many people didn't think was possible a year ago. You are now well on the way. European perspective, that was a huge step. Candidate status within Georgia's grasp. The European Union has given you the roadmap to get there. This is huge. And the United States fully supports the work that you are doing to try and make that next step a reality. In fact, everything that the United States does here, whether over the last 30 years or in the years to come, is directly tied to helping Georgia build a stronger security, more stable system, helping you to be able to better defend your borders, defend against aggression, helping you diversify and strengthen your economy so that you have better jobs, more opportunities, that it's maybe a more equal wealth across the country rather than just in big cities with some rural areas left behind. And of course, trying to help Georgia establish strong, resilient democratic institutions, because we have all seen, and you have seen in your history, that is what will save your democracy. And our executive was our robust media, and of course our civil society that never stopped speaking out for the public good. As journalists, as media representatives, of course you have a tremendous opportunity. You also have a huge responsibility to inform the public, to provide fair, balanced, and accurate information so that people can make informed decisions. It's a tough world out there, as you know very well from living in it, but also from your studies. This is really a challenge right now with so much information coming at people, sometimes very segmented and many times wildly inaccurate and intentionally misleading and confusing. So I am very hopeful after my travels and my chance to talk to young Georgians, but really Georgians across ages and sectors. There are so many Georgians who have the same idea and the same vision of success for their country, for your country. The future of your country is truly in your hands. You have the chance to shape this country into the future that you want to live in. And I just encourage you, never give up on that. And never think that the other guy is going to do it for you. It's your opportunity, it's also your responsibility.
Thanks for your answer. Maybe we can open the floor for students because it's their meeting. So yeah, Nino, let's go ahead.
Hello, Ms. Degnan. I'm Nina Sigua, the student of Caucasus School of Media. First of all, I would like to thank you for this amazing opportunity. And as you mentioned before, we are in a process of waiting for EU membership candidacy because Georgia got the status of European perspective, as you said. But unfortunately, it is going poorly. And my question is, how do you think us, younger generation, or the students can take part in achieving this goal? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nino. That's a huge question right now, obviously. Great focus on this, as there should be. In many ways, this is the most important issue facing your country. And everyone, but certainly every political leader should be doing everything he or she can to help Georgia accomplish this and achieve candidate status. That's one reason why we have put such an emphasis on encouraging Georgia's political leaders to work together. If there's one issue that should unite this country and unite political leaders, it should be this. This is what the vast majority of Georgians want. And I think because Georgians know that European membership equals peace, prosperity, stability. If you look at the other European Union member states, even the most recent ones, that's what they've achieved through this process. It is not an easy process. It is not a fun process. It involves a lot of compromises. It involves a lot of hard work. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to make those changes to align with European standards. But there are many, many friends, including the United States, that want to work with Georgia to make that process easier, faster, and more successful. As far as what people can do, I think maybe even demanding that the leadership works together. The European Union is not looking to see just if you've adopted certain legislation and you've checked the boxes on this and this. They're looking to see, can Georgia as a country come together, put differences aside, come together and make compromises that are in the whole country's best interests, not one party or another party, the whole country's best interests, because that's what is required in the European Union. You can't have a fractured Georgia trying to represent different views in Brussels. You have to come as one country, one view. This is where we stand. This is what we're advocating for. I think that's what the European Union Commission and Council are looking at now. Can Georgia do that in this process of candidate status? It is very difficult because I understand compromise is not something that comes easily. But I think insisting that your leaders put the country's interests before their parties or their personal interests is very important. Thank you.
May I have a follow-up question? Yeah. When you're mentioning that Georgian political leadership should do everything for better steps in the direction of European Union, you mean everything is not done, or something is done, or what is done?
There have been some positive steps. But again, this is not a superficial exercise. This is looking to see whether there is meaningful implementation, whether there is the political determination, goodwill to actually follow through on the intent behind the, let's say, the 12 priorities. Yeah. There's no doubt or surprises in the 12 priorities. What is needed is real follow-through now, and not just, as I say, changing legislation, adopting legislation. For instance, the Parliament has asked for Venice Commission or ODIHR opinions to assess whether proposed legislation is in alignment with the European Union laws and standards. When you get those opinions, which are by legal experts in Europe representing best practices, you should incorporate those recommendations into your draft legislation if your goal is to ensure your legislation is in fact harmonious with the European Union's. You want to join this organization, then you need to standardize your laws and regulations with the European Union's. Unfortunately, many of the recommendations, for instance, that the Venice Commission and ODIHR have provided over years at this point regarding electoral reform have still not been incorporated. Many of them have. But the main one that the Venice Commission and ODIHR continue to recommend is a comprehensive systemic review of Georgia's electoral code. Not piecemeal ad hoc amendments, but a comprehensive review. That was what they recommended last year and I think the year before. So there's been plenty of time to do it, but it's just not happening. The same with the broadcast law. Again, an interim opinion that recommended immediate changes to the draft law. The draft law was adopted without those being incorporated. So those are simple things that could be done, again, if there is real commitment and I would say political will to do this in a way that's in the best interest of the country.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mariam Galandaze. I'm from School of Media. First of all, Ms. Დეგნαν, I want to thank you for your visit in Caucasus University. It's a pleasure to meet you. As you already mentioned, the Russian aggression that the Ukraine is facing right now is very familiar to us Georgians, and we all know that the US government is well aware of the situation and understands what we went through last 30 years in terms of Russian aggression, and your participation in these wars is undoubtful, and we are very thankful for that. So my question is the victory of the Ukraine directly tied of the victory of Georgia when the majority of Georgians disagree with the government's actions and its politics? Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. The victory of Ukraine is the victory for all of us. There is no doubt about it. As I said, this is a war against our way of life. This is an attempt by Putin and the Kremlin to return to a world of spheres of influence, a world that's ruled by fear and oppression and war. Putin started this war out of nothing, for nothing except to reestablish control over the sovereign nation of Ukraine. And who knows what beyond that. So I do think that that is why you see such commitment on the bipartisan commitment in the United States, unity in Europe, despite how difficult that is and the pressure that they're under for a variety of reasons. But the unity is holding because we all understand what is at stake. It's our freedom that is at stake. And I think anybody who isn't appreciating the gravity of what the Ukrainians are fighting for, and that they are fighting for us, is really missing the point, is really, really missing the point. And I think in the long run, the clarity that this, I hope, will bring in terms of commitment, the fundamental necessity of human beings to have freedom, to have the independence to decide their own governments, to decide their own thoughts and express them freely is a human instinct. I mean, you look all over the world, even in places that haven't even had the experience of democracy, you will see that people yearn for freedom and independence at some level. And the United States believes that people deserve that. That's one reason we care so much about Georgia. Sometimes people say, why does the United States care so much about Georgia? We care about Georgia's success because you are a country that has fought for your freedom, fought for your independence, you have stood for your values, rule of law, respect for human rights. Now I've had a chance to visit places like Ilya Chavchavadze's homes, or Kaki Tsereteli's home, or Vaja
Pshavela.
Thank you. You know, these are people who were writing and thinking about these fundamental values, principles, beliefs well over 100 years ago. And now that I've been reading more about the golden era, you know, the 10th, 11th, 12th century, individual freedom was also an element of that. So this is woven into Georgia's tradition and culture. Sometimes when I hear people say that European values are contradictory or conflict with Georgian values, like, no, they're not. I mean, look back to the 11th century, or look back to Akaki Tsereteli. I mean, they were writing about these things then. And that, I think, is why Georgians feel this so strongly and have. No matter if it was 1801 or 1921 or 1979, 1989, your history is full of your commitment to holding on to these values, to your identity, to your culture and traditions. We feel the same in America, and I think that is what we share so much in common when we meet. We're like instantly brothers and sisters because we have this at heart.
Hello, Ms. Degnan. It is such a pleasure and a privilege to be here and listening to you, and for that, thank you very much. And now to move on to the question. So a lot of Georgian students want to go to USA and study and improve their professional skills there. Oh, sorry. I just
No problem. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And for that, we need to be able to do that. And the question is, are there any plans regarding this? For example, like simplifying the visa procedures and increasing the scholarships. Thank you very much.
Well, we love to have you come to America. We welcome your coming, and we want you to come back to Georgia and then bring all of that different ideas, maybe new ideas, different perspectives back to your country and see what you want to do with those here. We do have a lot of great programs. We've over 6,000 alumni have gone to different exchange programs in the United States. You're familiar, I'm sure, with Flex, which is the high school student program. We have UGrad, we have Fulbright, we have the Apolitical Academy. We've got lots of different programs that we support. And I know there are other ones also that go to Europe, like Erasmus and probably the UK and Japan. I would just encourage you to take advantage of that, especially as media students, because opening your mind to different perspectives is so important to being able to give that balanced reporting and that fair and accurate information to people. We did have a backlog of cases after COVID, and so I think for some students and some business people, the delay on getting an appointment was really long. We have cleaned most of that up. I think students don't have any problem now, and the business people who are going are also able to get appointments much more easily now. And I'll tell you, that took really heroic work by our consular staff because all the embassies in the whole world had a huge backlog thanks to COVID. But we want you to come, and we want you to have that real experience so that you know America, not just from movies or not just from TV, but you see the good and the bad. It's a democracy that is struggling to improve all the time, and at least we have the courage to look ourselves in the mirror and point out when we're getting it wrong and when we need to do better. But I do think it enriches us in America to have you come, to have people from Georgia, to have people from other countries come and help us see, first learn about your country, and that there's a country of Georgia, not just a state, but It also helps us to broaden our horizons in America, especially those people who may never get a passport or go to a foreign country. We need that exposure too. And so again, I encourage you to come. We do what we can with our limited resources, but we are always so proud, and I'm incredibly proud of what the alumni of our programs have done over the last 30 years in building Georgia. I meet them all the time, and they are so impressive. Whatever they decided to do with it, they have come back and given back to their country, and it's really great to see that. Thank you.
Part of our lecturers, the lecturers of School of Media, also are the alumni of US different scholarships, including me, so we are so grateful for that.
Including me.
Yeah, and we are all, then we are back, we were back and we were trying to serve our country, so we also encourage our students to go, study and be back, as you have mentioned,
Good.
We have a screen here, Nana. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My colleague points out, here's some information. Go on to our website. If you're not familiar with it, I think the website address is up there. It's got lots of information, maybe some programs that you're not familiar with. They're competitive, you know that, but I think if you're going to this university, you already know how to work hard and to excel. So, good luck.
Okay, please.
It's nice to meet you. Thank you for coming to our university. I had a question. For example, when I was a child, I planned to become a journalist, but I'm learning something different now. And you mentioned that before you became an American ambassador, you used to be a journalist. So I wanted to ask, maybe you could elaborate about us, because most of us, well, at least I didn't know about it, so we're kind of interested to learn more about it. And what do you think about our media? How are they handling Ukrainian war and the current situation in our government? And maybe tell us, what would you do if you were still a journalist and not an ambassador now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So interesting question.
Yeah, great question. Well, I like to say I've had 4 careers. I too, as a young person, I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. And I wanted to be a foreign correspondent because I wanted to learn about other cultures and countries and learn more about my country by doing that. So my undergraduate degree is in journalism from Medill School of Journalism. My mother talked me into taking the LSAT and going to law school, so she was probably right. I went to law school to study communications law, so I thought I would kind of continue with the journalism as a lawyer. In the end, I ended up doing both corporate law, but then my third kind of career, I sailed in the Pacific for 5 years with a friend. We had a sailboat built, and I ended up being a constitutional law lawyer in the Pacific. And that was fascinating, really very interesting. Most constitutional issues in my country have been settled long ago, but this was a new country with a new constitution and really some very new and interesting issues. And then while I was there, I learned about the career of diplomacy, interacting with US diplomats, because I was working for the Supreme Court of the island nation. And that's where I took the Foreign Service exam and sort of went through our process of becoming a diplomat. So I say this just to say, you can think that you want to be this, and it can take you on a path to somewhere else. But everything I did as a journalist, as a lawyer, even sailing now as a diplomat, built on the skills I had. As a journalist, it's important to be able to interview people. It's important to be able to tell facts from opinion. It's important to be able to write well, write both convincingly and objectively. And the same is true of an attorney. You have to be able to interview people. You have to be able to tell when they're lying and when they're telling you the truth. You have to be able to write convincingly, sometimes objectively. And I think that's also true as a diplomat. What the time as a sailor did was give me courage. because there were times when I was really afraid in the middle of a cyclone or something like that, and you're out on the ocean, you know, really, really testing your resilience, testing your courage, sometimes testing your integrity, you know, just to stick with something that you've committed to do. And also, it just broadened my horizons because I traveled all over, you know, the Pacific and Asia. So I encourage you, whatever you think you want to do now, pursue it. But if other doors open along the way, have a look in. Maybe it's something that you also would be interested in doing. And your second question, which is so important, because media freedom is so essential to a healthy democracy. You can't have a real democracy if you've silenced dissent. If you are unwilling to hear different views, you can't have a democracy without an exchange of views. That's what it's all about. That's why compromise is so important. And you know, I look at my Congress. It's tough going in there, but they negotiate and they work at it until they reach a compromise that is in the best interests of the United States. I saw that happen here in Georgia when your political leaders were negotiating, both when I first got here 3 years ago for the March 8th agreement on electoral reform. Some of that made a difference in the parliamentary elections. And then, of course, I saw it over 6 months of them negotiating with each other in something that resulted in a pretty good agreement that is essentially the 12 recommendations. And they did that by articulating their positions, their red lines, back and forth. It was pretty civil when they weren't in front of the cameras. It was quite a civil process. And in the end, I think it is something that is in the country's best interest. But it required compromise, very difficult compromise. And in the end, I think that is what undermined that agreement, is some of the parties were not willing to follow through on those compromises. I encourage you as journalism students, please, ethics are essential. Journalism is a self-regulated industry, just like the law. If we don't uphold our ethics and hold each other to that high standard, the government will come in and try to regulate for you. But you have to show that as a profession, you are capable of regulating yourselves and holding yourselves to high ethical standards of accuracy, of balance, of fairness, of doing the hard work that it takes to be good journalists, not just journalists. There's a difference between a professional journalist and someone who just says, I'm a reporter. And I see it all the time. I think there are a good example, for instance, is these amendments to the broadcast law that were just adopted last week. As I said, there is an interim opinion from November that was issued by the Council of Europe saying, look, there are problems with this law if you want it to align with European best practices and standards. First of all, the definition of hate speech is so broad that it can be easily misused to silence criticism. Hate speech is defined as speech that incites violence or hatred. That's it. It's a very narrow definition. And broader than that allows governments or others to use it to silence critics, which is the end of democracy if you start silencing those like civil society and media that are there to be watchdogs, not attack dogs, watchdogs. That's really protecting the citizens' rights there. There's also problems with the right of reply and the right of appeal in those amendments. I don't know why the recommendations that were given by the Council of Europe in November were not incorporated into the draft that was passed last week. Now, the law, my understanding is Parliament plans to make additional amendments over the next 6 months when the final Council of Europe opinion is released in February. But some of those changes could have been incorporated now. and they weren't. I hope that we will see a more wholesome adjustment of the law to protect the broadcasters' rights. The Council of Europe even asked Parliament to hold off on adopting the law because broadcasters are currently developing their own co-regulation mechanism. So the law needs to wait until that has been finished so that it can be incorporated into the law. This goes back to self-regulation of the industry. Broadcasters are coming up with their own mechanism for regulating the industry, and a law has just been pushed through without that input. So again, let's hope that when this law comes back up for Parliament's review, all of these recommendations that have been made based on best practices in Europe will be reflected in Georgia's law.
Madam Ambassador, one thing I would like to take this opportunity and to ask you, the biggest thing you're going to miss about Georgia when you leave this country was going to be? I know it's hard, but I mean, at least...
I can't well, I mean, actually it is pretty easily. The people. The people, if I think about it, of course there's scenery, there's food, there's wine, there's so many things, but what I will hold in my heart forever are the people that I have met. And that's why this past year has been so incredible for me, is because I've had a chance to meet people all over, mountainous Sajara, Svaneti, Zugdidi, Tusheti, Shatili, Tbilisi, I mean, everywhere, doing all kinds of incredible things, entrepreneurs, farmers, journalists, young people. I will admit that probably one of my favorite things is to go to universities or go to our American corners, our American spaces around the country, and get a chance to hear from Georgia's young people, because you guys are so impressive, and you give me the complete confidence in the future of this country. I mean, I have no doubt that Georgia is going to succeed, is going to excel, because there are people like you who are behind that energy and have a clear choice. You have made a clear choice, and you are willing to work to make that happen, that European future. As I said, the United States wants to support that. We've been supporting that vision of a Euro-Atlantic future for 30 years, and we are going to keep doing it, supporting you.
Yeah, Kaha is also a former journalist, by the way.
Surrounded.
Print journalist, yeah.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. It's a great honor to be able to ask you a question. We have listened a lot of supportive speeches regarding human rights and healthcare about the third president of Saakashvili. But as we see, the situation is getting worse. I am eager to ask you a question. Is there any chances to have more activities from any institutions of our USA partners?
Mm-hmm. Well, that is a very important and topical question. I think everybody is very focused on the well-being of Mr. Saakashvili. We certainly are in the United States at the embassy. And there have been, I think, really important Georgian institutions. I mean, we put tremendous confidence in the Public Defender's Office as the constitutionally mandated agency to protect the human rights of every Georgian, regardless of their political affiliation or their gender or anything. And so we followed very closely what the Public Defender's Office has been saying and doing on Mr. Saakashvili's case. I think Georgia was very lucky to have such a courageous public defender, Nino Lamjaria, and I think her team that's currently in place is very good. We can all hope that the public defender that is selected to follow her will also be independent and as courageous and have the kind of integrity that Nino and her team have. But it is important to, again, as journalists, it's important to get the facts. And again, when there is something that almost every Georgian is following and concerned about, one way or the other, one side of the issue or the other, the facts become very important. And that is what the Public Defender's Office was trying to establish. I think if lab work needs to be done, and some people don't have confidence in this lab or that lab, let's get the information from a credible, reliable, independent laboratory so that the people of Georgia can all have the same information and all make an informed decision. There's too much at stake here. I mean, as I watch this unfold, sometimes I feel like people are forgetting that this is a human being. There's a human life at stake here. I know this is an emotional issue, on both sides. But at heart, it is the health and welfare of a human being. And your Constitution, our shared value in terms of the respect for human rights means that we need to put that at front and center, in front of the politics, and do what is right for the health and well-being of this citizen of Georgia, this person, this human being. I think the government has acknowledged that they have a responsibility for ensuring that Mr. Saakashvili receives the health care he needs, including the psychological health care that he needs. The best way forward is to do this in a neutral, independent way that all Georgian citizens can have confidence in. Not just Georgian citizens, that everybody can have confidence in. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, lady. Oh.
I guess we have a chance to get one more question, yeah.
This lady back here.
Yeah.
No men.
No men, yeah. It's so feminine profession.
Hello. As everyone said, it's a great opportunity for us that you're here and answering our questions.
Yeah, it's okay.
Everyone said, as you said, and as my friend said, that the most difficult and I can say most dangerous event of the 2022 was the war in Ukraine. And as a Georgian, I can say that it is really personal for me, as we have the same experience with Russia. 20% of our country is occupied by this neighbor, I guess. What is more terrible is the politic Russia uses in the occupied territories. The people who believe that they are not part of our country. I'm interested in your opinion as an ambassador and as an expert of the international affairs and the diplomacy. What do you think that our country should do to melt this ice between us and improve the relationships with the occupied territories?
Thank you. That is a really important question and very complex one, obviously. And I was recently at this university for a report by the autonomous government of Abkhazia of the work that they are trying to do to build rapport, to maintain those connections that still exist between communities on either side of the ABL, but that over time are weakening. We look for those opportunities to keep the channels of communication open, to push back against the very aggressive disinformation that is trying to recreate history.
I would like to, on behalf of my students and my staff, we have a small Christmas gift for you. I would like to ask you to open up Christmas. Ukrainian, according to our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, we did it this way.
And a huge honor to represent my president, my country, the American people here in a country that is important to the United States. For some of the reasons I said earlier, because we have so much in common, including our shared values, a huge respect for all that Georgia has accomplished and done, but also just a real commitment to Georgia's success, to your sovereignty, territorial integrity in the face of continued Russian aggression. We want you to be that vibrant, prosperous democracy that you have been working to be for centuries.
Our pleasure and honor to host you tonight here today. Thank you.